its schools and its community, but it must get permission from taxpayers, from voters through a bond election to secure those funds. And one thing that people may not realize is that since since 1919, Georgetown ISD has been doing bond elections. We were born as a district in 1917, and in 1919, we held our first bond election, which, fun-filled fact, that was for $100,000 to build the original Georgetown High School, and now that building still stands today, and it's our Hammerlin Center for Leadership and Learning. Okay, so bond elections are about the interest and sinking tax rate, and that is the tax rate to the left of your screen that says 0.329 pennies per $100 property value. This is the tax rate that is impacted through bond elections. Maintenance and operations is the tax rate that is set by the funding formulas by the state of Texas. And that tax rate has been going down over the last several years. We're funded on a per student allotment. And the state says, based on the funding formulas, your tax rate will be this amount to generate the revenue you're going to need to have your schools. And also there's revenue generated beyond that is part of our recapture payment back to the state because we have higher property values in Georgetown. Bond elections are about interest and seeking tax rate. And one thing that is important to note is that there is a cap on that tax rate of 50 cents. We stay well below that throughout the years. And our goal in bond elections is to try to have minimal impact on that tax rate, which is why we tend to go for bonds more frequently, because we want to have a minimal tax rate impact. And we don't want to ask for more than what we can accommodate with construction and implementation and all the project needs for those bond items within a 3-year window. So what that means is, one of the things we talk about is INS funds, which are considered in this bond election, the 32-cent tax rate. Those funds approved by voters cannot go into the maintenance and operations of a school district. There are very specific laws of what we can and cannot use bond funds for. And all of the projects we've recommended are approved through bond council and are deemed as qualifying for those acquisitions. So we cannot take voter approved bond funds to pay light bills or to pay salaries and payroll and run the day-to-day operations in the school district. There's specific laws on that. All right, our tax rate history has been going down. One of the things we know is our property values continue to go up in Georgetown ISD and in the entire Central Texas area. And what we have seen is that our tax rate has been compressed based on the value increase. However, we are still a property wealthy district, and we do send money back to the state. And we'll talk about that more at the end of this presentation. But as you can see, our tax rate has been going down over the last several years. And as a person, as a taxpayer and a property owner in Georgetown ISD, I like that. One of the things you can see when you compare ourselves to other districts in the area, we have been able to have a lower interest and sinking tax rate than a lot of our peers. And I appreciate the efforts of our board and our community we have more frequent bond elections for try to keep minimal tax rate impact and trying to keep that number down as low as we possibly can while still advancing the desires of the community through bond elections. All right, so enrollment. Believe it or not, Georgetown is growing. Just take a drive down Williams Drive, right? And you'll know that we continue to grow. One thing is this slide, that we have this information on our demographic reports. We get a quarterly demographic update, and we're constantly watching enrollment projections and capacity of buildings. So what the elementary forecast is that we have 4 schools that are nearing capacity and will be over capacity in a few years. And we also look at our demographic projections, and we see that Eastview High School, if you aren't aware of that, does have more students enrolled this year than Georgetown High School. And while the projections, they've exceeded the projections that we originally had for Eastview High School, and that number continues to grow. But what this shows us is Wagner Middle School is nearing capacity. Eastview High School is moving in that direction. So we know that we're going to need an additional comprehensive high school, probably, we believe, by around 2027-28 school year. We think that's the number that's the year that our best estimates tell us. And so that means we've got to start considering the stages we go through to prepare us to open a high school, comprehensive high school, by 2027-28. And we'll talk about that more in a moment. We've also know that we will be adjusting some attendance zones later on down the road. There's not a new middle school in the Wagner attendance zone in this bond. We feel like we can accommodate that capacity in other ways, but there is a recommendation for a middle school in the GHS attendance zone. Okay, right now, as of 10/13, we have 12,618 students enrolled in GISD. We did lose a few students in enrollment during the pandemic over last school year. We see that a lot of those students are coming back. And as a matter of fact, since October 13th, that number, it grows each week. And so we are seeing a continued trend in growth in students in Georgetown ISD. And our demographer projections are usually within 1% to 2% accuracy. But we know that there's a continued trend in growth. We also know, as we track vacant developed lots, that we are increasing in vacant developed lots in Georgetown ISD. And in fact, next year, we're projected to have more vacant developed lots on the ground ready for homes than even Leander ISD. So we continue to see a growth in vacant developed lots. And what that means is basically a developer has gone in, they've done all the site work, the prep work, the utilities are in stock, ready to go, and and it's time to start building homes. So if you notice on the screen in the Wolf Ranch attendance zone, that is the area with the highest number of vacant lots, and we don't have other elementaries in that attendance zone to relieve that growth. And Wolf Ranch is growing fast. We do have more vacant developed lots. The next fastest area is in the Williams and Carver and Mitchell attendance zones, but mainly in Williams and Mitchell. And we do believe we have a little longer before we're going to need an elementary there. We do not have an elementary school site in the Williams and Mitchell attendance zones in the southeast corner of the district, but we are working on securing school sites. We do have 2 school sites in the Wolf Ranch attendance zone. And if the bond is approved, then we would start construction of an elementary school in the Wolf Ranch attendance zone first. So there's some construction timelines. Basically, what we want to make sure everyone is aware of is that in previous bonds, we will have design funds in some of the referendums, and there are design funds in the current proposition. But we do not have design funds for elementaries 11 and 12, and we're going to need those a little quicker than we originally thought. So should these bonds pass, you can see the design timeline and construction timeline of when we think we can have a school on the ground. We're expecting to be able to have an elementary school, should the bond pass, on the ground in the Wolf Ranch attendance zone by the year 2024. All right, and one thing we can talk about later, I went back to this slide, is the timeline for high school construction. This has a lot of implications of when we start preparing for that construction, and we'll talk about that more in a moment. All right, so in this bond election, we have 5 propositions. One thing I want to make sure everyone's aware of is that each proposition to cast a ballot, to mark your ballot in this bond election, you would need to vote on all 5 propositions. We encourage people to make their vote in all 5 propositions, but this bond election is, you will have, should you go vote, you will see the state election for the 9 constitutional amendments. You will see the city elections for 10 different charters, and then you will see the GISD bond election that has 5 different propositions. So we would ask voters to make sure they carefully consider all 5 propositions should you go vote. And this is how they're broken down. And I'm going to go through each one of these individually, but you can see right away that you have the proposition A, which is for new facilities, renovations, land, and buses to address growth and aging evolving needs. You have proposition B for technology infrastructure and student and staff equipment and devices. Proposition C is a renovations to the Collette Performing Arts Center. Proposition D is for the district swim facility, and proposition E is for the GHS tenants complex. So I'm going to go ahead and go through each one of these propositions, and make sure I try to give you the most thorough explanation in an efficient amount of time, and make sure that you're aware that this information is available on our website. There's more information available on our website. Okay, so proposition A, ladies and gentlemen, this is the lion's share of the bond election. Proposition A would provide for 2 elementary schools. As I mentioned before, we would need 1 elementary school in the Wolf Ranch attendance zone, as that is being proposed to be built in the Santa Rita Ranch neighborhood in the far northwest corner of the district. Elementary 12 would be either at a southwest property in Parkside development, or in a southeast property that we have not yet secured that location. But elementary 12, we would not need to start that construction until closer to 23, 24. So we would start right away on elementary 11 in the Wolf Ranch attendance zone area. This proposition also calls for a new Benole Middle School, and I'll talk about more of that in a moment. Future Ready Learning Complex, A lot of information about that, and then the other items listed on your screen. On the aging and evolving part of the bond, this is we do these each bond. We have a facilities assessment that stays in draft form. Basically, we're constantly updating that assessment, and we have a cycle of replacing rooftops, HVAC systems, all the things that we need to do to make sure we take care of the current facilities that we own. You also see that there's sunshades from some elementary playscapes, buses and maintenance vehicles. We're continuing to upgrade our buses. And one thing I would say on this and in future propositions is people would say, well, how do you invest your bonds? And for new school construction, a bond may be 25-year finance or 30, but we have a track record of paying those off early. When we finance bonds for other items, for example, like a school bus or for technology, we do not finance any of these items beyond the life of the asset we acquire. So if we're buying computers or technology devices, you'll see a 3 and sometimes a 5-year, depending on the complexity of the device, finance period. In a bus, you might see an 8 to a 10-year bond payoff note because we keep buses much longer than that. So I just want to make sure I made you aware of that. Okay, we mentioned the 2 elementary schools, and we mentioned a new Benold Middle School. The new Benold Middle School would be built in the Palmer Ranch development near Reagan and Williams, if you will. There's a development out in that area, and we have a middle school site there. This school design was funded in the 2018 bond election, so the school has been designed, and we are ready to start construction should voters approve this bond. This would also this will improve efficiency in attendance zones and also provide new learning environments for the students of Benold. We're currently just finished some renovations of Forbes. Basically, the Forbes location needs to stay where it is, and I have some maps I'll show you in a moment on zones that can help explain the zoning aspect. I think I have those maps right now. Okay, so we're going to talk about this in 2 ways. First, we'll talk about the Benold Middle School zone. If you'll see where Forbes and Benold sort of overlap, the light blue and the yellow, one of the things that we know is population density will increase inside more in the center of Georgetown, if you will, and will continue to grow out as well. Building a new Benold out at Palmer Ranch would allow us to clean up some attendance boundaries, give those students new schools, and then should we need another middle school later on, as population density increases, we would have the option to either build a middle school near McCoy or down on DB Wood just past Lake Georgetown. We are not recommending to build a new Benold near the McCoy site because, as you can see, the attendance zones, it would not save us an attendance zone and capacity efficiency. These zones have not been drawn out yet. Zoning is a whole nother topic that takes time and committee work and feedback from the community. But building a new middle school for Benold would allow for a further evolution of population density. And in this bond is to fund the design of renovating the current Benold to make it a new Frost Elementary, therefore increasing the capacity of Frost Elementary to where it can be a larger elementary school like our other elementary schools, and can allow for capacity as Cooper attendance zones grow, as some of the Village attendance zones and McCoy attendance zones grow. The Frost zoning area will need to be able to adjust and hold more students. So we're trying to be efficient with the new building and where it's located to serve the long-range needs of the district, while also maximizing that space in the current Benold to a new Frost. Now, the current Frost Elementary would be used for other district facilities. We do not have any intentions to vacate that site. We definitely need that for expanding programs in the district. So I want to make sure I just covered that. I may have spent too much time on that. I don't know. These are sometimes it's tough to know just how much time to spend. In Proposition A is what we've called a future ready learning complex. This facility has not been named because it has not been built. However, the design of this facility has been funded from the 2018 bond election. And here's what we're looking at with a future ready learning complex. It will hold multiple programs I'm going to go over in a moment, but most importantly, you'll see on the screen, holds advanced career technical education programs that we're constantly growing and evolving in that to try to give kids more opportunity to engage in programs that can lead to career options for them and explore new learning. A Richarte High School would have its own high school space in this facility, a Bridges transition program for 18 plus special education students, a district child care facility, expanding our current Eagle Wings to hold a district-wide child care facility, and our district healthcare center. And so this complex, in essence, can take care of preschool kiddos all the way to ages 22 through special education, but open up opportunities for students across the district. Here's the thing. We have Georgetown High School, and ECU High School is comprehensive high schools. As we go to a third comprehensive high school down the road, and eventually Georgetown will have more comprehensive high schools, the redundancy of offering advanced career technical education programs that are more technical to offer, therefore usually more expensive to offer. We can expand those programs into one district complex. This will be built on Airport Road, not far across the street from the fire station there. We've secured 35 acres next to the Industrial Development Center. This would allow for our CT programs to grow. It allows us to create more space at our comprehensive high school campuses by allowing more classroom space to the freshman and sophomore students in career technical education programs, because the juniors and seniors will be going to another facility. Right now, we are out of space for a lot of these programs that we offer. Guys, it's anything from your traditional ag mechanics and FFA programs to rocketry, to drones, to aeronautical engineering, where we build airplanes. Right now, we're out of space for airplane construction and all the different things. And these programs lead to lifelong learning for our students and opens many career pathway doors for them. We offer cosmetology in Georgetown ISD now. This facility would allow for advanced cosmetology program to allow more students to be involved, because we have a small space for cosmetology now, and we need to expand that offering. Cosmetology basically allows a student to graduate from Georgetown ISD licensed to work and go straight to the workplace. We're excited about that. Culinary arts. We have phenomenal culinary arts programs. Those courses are currently restricted to a certain number of students just because of program demand. And this facility will allow those students to have advanced culinary arts training and actually serve meals with the community. All the things that we think we can do to create more opportunities for students, you can see in this space. One thing that's interesting, and I spoke about many of those, but one thing that people may or may not be aware of with Rasharte High School is right now we can only hold about 85 to 90 students from Rasharte, and we have a lot of students that want to go to Rasharte. It is a great high school. It is also housed in the annex of Georgetown High School. So it does not have its own independent campus identity. It is limited to what it can offer to our students. And in this future-ready complex, Rasharte High School would have their own classrooms, their own library. They would have their own campus identity on the second floor. And it will also open up more career technical education opportunities to the students of Rasharte High School. So we think that is looking to expand their capacity. You can see here, we could offer up to 350 students to the Rasharte High School experience. It would allow us to grow our child care facility. We have a child care facility that has a waiting list really long, and also our student development programs and our CTE programs can also work with these students as well. We can, Eagle Wings could hold up to 139, 140 students. Bridges will be able to serve. Right now, they're limited to 30 student capacity, could serve up to 80 students. If you don't know anything about Bridges, it's a great transition for special education students into adulthood and more independent living. Right now, they're housed at the back of Old Carver, and this option would allow those students to have modern, up-to-date facilities that they can make sure is the home for that program for years to come. So I've spent a lot of time on the Future Ready Complex and on the 2 elementary schools of Manold and how we would transition all of that, because it's a lot to consume, but it is definitely something that we're trying to make sure we're intentional about maximizing space and efficiencies and securing the long-term instructional future of the district. All right, Proposition A also has aging and evolving facilities. You see all the HVAC systems at those 3 campuses. Some of them are 17 to 20 years old. Rooftop replacements, all the safety and security. You may have seen more security cameras around our facilities. We're continuing to upgrade our security options that we provide for our schools. And then Proposition B, this is for $16.5 million. Now, the technology that would go into the new school construction, that technology component is funded in Proposition A. Proposition B is for a continued upgrade to servers, all the district network equipment that is crucial to our existence, especially now. You know, when in March of 2020, we were forced to go one-to-one much quicker than any of us ever expected. It was part of our long-range plan. We just got there more quickly. This allows us to continue to buy new laptops and refresh devices for students, for our staff, and all the network needs that we have in the Georgetown ISD. It's a continuation of a plan that we started in 2015. And since that time, we've greatly upgraded our technology offerings, and we're continuing to grow there. Proposition C. What's interesting about this one is in the 2018 bond, we were considering a complete renovation of the Performing Arts Center. But we also know that complete renovation may have been a little, put a strain on the tax rate that we weren't sure that we were ready to try to consider. And as well as we could not get all of that work done in time. And so we felt like it was important to go ahead with the technology upgrades, the lighting, and the complete technology rebuild of the Collette Performing Arts Center. This bond is to complete that renovation process by doing all the furnitures and fixtures and all the things on the interior of the Performing Arts Center. Ladies and gentlemen, that thing was built in 1999. It's a great facility. It serves all the grade levels and a lot of people in the community. I'm sure most of you have been there, but this would be basically updating and upgrading if you would, like a 20-something-year-old home. So that is what the rationale behind that one is. Now we have Proposition D. Proposition D is a swim facility. This is an important conversation in the sense of explaining where we are with this project. As you know, in 2018, we had proposed an indoor swim facility with, we were working on an agreement in a partnership with the YMCA, and that did not pass. And at the same time, there was some concern about whether or not we had all the details lined out, and we understood that. So what we've done, and as we readdress what are we going to do about swim, is because we still have swim programs and they're growing. And as we go to more comprehensive high schools down the road, we'll have even more swimmers as we continue to grow. So what we looked at was, what is the most strategic approach for Georgetown ISD to provide a long-term swim facility needs by building an outdoor 50-meter pool. There are not many like those in this area, that would allow us to serve multiple comprehensive high schools instead of going to smaller indoor pools and building multiple pools. So with this, we have an outdoor 50-meter pool. Georgetown ISD, this bond is the funding of that construction. And in this construction is a portion of the indoor water that we would share construction responsibilities with the YMCA. Also in this construction, we would fund 60% of the locker rooms and showers because we would be using those facilities. Then the YMCA has signed an agreement. They will come in and build a YMCA facility around the rest of this complex. So what that does is the YMCA would manage the day-to-day operations of this facility. Georgetown ISD would have first rights to the water. Should Georgetown ISD host meets and rent the outdoor swim space, those funds would go to covering the costs of our operating expenditures. We've done research on what that's going to take. We met with the owners of a 50-meter outdoor pool in South Austin, and the general consensus we took from all that is we will be able to rent this space out quite a bit with our shared partnership with the YMCA helping on costs. We do not see a maintenance and operation hit to the budget that we might have been worried about in the past. So this agreement, we think, will secure the long-term needs of swim and Georgetown ISD, allow us to have a funding mechanism to reduce maintenance and operations costs, and also, should this pass, the community would have a community-based YMCA facility that they would have access to through memberships and other programs. So that's, it is a significant proposition. And now let's talk about Proposition E. The Georgetown High School tennis complex renovation of $850,000, resurfacing the courts, doing work that has not been done to Georgetown ISD tennis courts in probably 20 years. One thing you know about Georgetown ISD on our bonds is we do rotations. Not only do we do rotations on rooftops and HVAC systems and buses and the different cycles, we also renovate a lot of our athletic facilities as well. So in essence, Georgetown High School tennis has not received the renovations that the committee is recommending. And so in that, this is what Proposition E. Now we have 5 propositions because anything that is not related to the construction of a new school facility or preparation for a new school facility is required by law to be in its own proposition. So that is why you see 5 in this bond election. All right, so should you go vote? And if you're a registered voter, we encourage you to be engaged in the voting process. This is an example of the ballot language you will see. For example, you see Proposition A on there. And by the way, I see that I did not talk about the ag barns at Georgetown High School and Eastview High School. Side note, our Citizens Advisory Committee, when talking to us, the conversation was, if we are recommending a district facility for career and technical education, are you going to consider agricultural programs to go to that site? And the committee recommended to us that we build ag barns for each comprehensive high school. As you probably know, Eastview High School does not have an ag barn. Proposition A, the committee recommended we include an ag barn for Eastview High School and a new ag barn for Georgetown High School. That facility has been in existence for quite some time, and the committee felt like it needed to be replaced. So I did not speak to that. I apologize. I want to make sure I spoke to that one. Okay, should you go vote? Proposition A, this is the ballot language you'll see on the right. All the ballot language you see on the right means all the things on Proposition A or what we're recommending in that language. This is the legal language required for bond elections. And it's important that you note that the last sentence says this is a property tax increase. This is a law change through legislation that this is a required statement on all bond propositions. Now, it does not mean there's necessarily a tax rate increase, but this is an increase in bond indebtedness, which is property taxes are the funds used to pay down that debt. So I want to make sure we explain why that language is there. And speaking of tax rate impact, one of the things that we try to do in Georgetown is we've always tried to be very conservative on our estimates of tax rate impact. Each of the bond elections we've done, we've been able to come in under what our projection was. And so this projection is figured on a conservative basis of no property value growth beyond 3 years, forever and ever. And should we sell all the bonds at one time, taxpayers could see a 2.6 penny tax rate increase per $100 of property value. I also think it's important to explain to you or to share with you that we do not anticipate selling all those bonds at one time. So a bond election means the voters would authorize, should the bond pass, the voters have authorized Georgetown ISD to sell bonds to generate revenue to do all the projects we've recommended. And then we pay those off through taxes on the INS rate over time. Just the fact that the bonds are approved by voters does not mean we immediately start incurring debt. We do not start incurring debt on bonds until we actually sell the bond for the project. For example, construction of elementary school 11, we would start that design. We would start designing both, but the construction process for elementary 11 would start early. Construction funds for elementary 12 would not be needed for a couple of years. So we would not sell bonds to construct 12 until it was time to start funding that project. So therefore, our intention is to stagger the sale of bonds to delay incurring any debt until that debt is necessary to provide funds for the project. Therefore, we're hoping to minimize any tax rate impact. One thing about us in Georgetown is we've been paying off bonds earlier, and we've saved a lot of money, more than $23 million in savings for refinancing opportunities, and an additional $13.2 million by paying bonds prior to final maturity. So we also know that interest rates are low at this time. So our goal is to keep the tax rate impact to a minimum, but we do want to make sure we tell you that you could possibly see a 2.6 tax rate increase per $100 of property valuation should no property values grow and should bonds be sold at one time. We're just trying to make sure we're being as transparent and conservative in our projections as possible and explaining to you our strategies of how we want to try to minimize that tax rate impact. All right, and so on tax rates, one of the things that we talk about with bond elections is that there are specific laws that decide what can and can't be purchased through bond funds. One of the things you'll see on the INS bucket on the right of the screen is that the light blue shading there 100% of those dollars that go into that bucket stay in Georgetown ISD. You'll hear us use the word recapture quite often about the maintenance and operation tax rate and tax impact. This is the bucket that funds our schools. You can see payroll and general operating are the bulk of our costs. On this bucket, you'll also see that $19.4 million of those taxes will go back to the state of Texas because we are deemed a property wealthy district. So we will be sending $19.4 million to the state of Texas for its general budget. So what that looks like for Georgetown is that we basically keep 86 pennies, if you will, of every dollar to go into the M&O bucket, but 100 pennies of every dollar go in the bond bucket and stays local. So we try to make sure we put the items that we can fund through bonds because we maximize our purchasing power by having the full dollar asset that is in that bucket. And you can see on maintenance and operations, it tries to relieve pressure on that bucket. So we continue with payroll and general operations of the district. You can see about 89% of our tax dollars that are available to us to utilize go to those to the payroll, and then the other 11% to general operations. Basically how we pay our day-to-day operating bills. The main point here is interest and sinking bond dollars do stay local and are not subject to recapture by the state of Texas. So we're trying to maximize our purchasing power through bond elections. All right, so all of that to say, early voting is underway. If you've not yet voted, we would encourage you to do so, hoping that you're registered to vote. And election day, official election day, is November 2nd from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. One thing we want to make sure you're aware of is polling locations because of COVID-19, polling locations are a little reduced right now. There is one at Cowan Creek. There's one on Lakeway Drive there, the old district administration building. That's now our food service and technology facility. And then at the annex on Inner Loop. So we want to make sure that you're aware of the polling locations that are out there. You can find that information through our website and through the Williamson County website. Early voting ends on the October 29th. The poll times, I believe, are shorter than they were in previous years of early voting. So just make sure you're aware of polling locations and what the hours of those polling locations are. And you see the website at the bottom of your screen on wilco.org//elections. So also want to encourage everyone to learn more. You can go to GeorgetownISDbond.org that has more information about the bond election. And ladies and gentlemen, our job is to try to make sure we keep you informed. Bond elections are not easy to consume and understand all at one swath, but we want to encourage you to make sure that we continue to provide you with the information you need through those resources. And of course, you can always ask us more questions. Ultimately speaking, we want to make sure that in Georgetown ISD, we are good stewards of the resources you give us. Our bond elections are more frequently cycled because we do smaller amounts compared to other districts that are our size, and we try to keep it what we can do within a 3-year window to keep things transparent with you, and also allows us to be agile enough to adjust to the evolving needs. When we look at the growth projections, one thing that we're doing is trying to make sure we just stay just far enough ahead of the growth and make sure, but we don't want to be too far ahead of that growth. All right. But we feel like we're right in the sweet spot at this time. Okay. With that, I believe there's some questions. Guys, don't hold me, please hold. I'm new to facilitating a Zoom for a large group. So I believe what I'm supposed to do now is check with Melinda Brasher to see if there are any questions submitted. And if so, that we will make sure we give you an answer to those. So I'm going to hit mute and find out what's going on. Thank you.
All right. We do have a couple questions in. Great presentation. Thank you for all that information. You talked a little bit about a future need for high school number 3. And we have a question that says, it appears that high schools with 822 students operate better for students, staff, and the budget by not being overcrowded and by being able to offer all the high school academic programming. So why not consider a 3rd high school now instead of the Future Ready Learning Complex, since we've already invested so much in CTE, ag mechanics at both of our comprehensive high schools? Can you talk a little bit more about the high school 3 and future ready needs?
Yeah, absolutely. And appreciate the question. So first thing I want to make sure we're aware of is that all the investments we've made in career and technical education for the comprehensive high schools we have will not go away, and we'll be able to actually create more opportunities for students at the lower grade levels, because we do turn some students away with program capacity. So we're not uninvesting, if you will, if that's even a word, I don't know. But we're not short-sighting those investments. Those will continue to grow. And there's some of the equipment that we may need to bring over there with us. But the point is, we do not see this taking away from the investments we've already made. For population increase is for high school 3. In essence, high schools are very expensive, and it takes a lot of people to run a high school. So there's a certain economy of scale to where it's more beneficial to us as a district that's going to have multiple high schools. We try to keep them between the 2,000 and 2,300 student range. We try to stay in that 5A enrollment spot, if you will. That has been our philosophy, to not have larger 6A comprehensive high schools, but to have that range. I've served places with larger high schools. We just seem to be in a place in Georgetown where the 5A range and the 2,000 to 2,300 student range allows for maximum program offerings, a lot of opportunities for students to engage and participate, but also there's a certain economy of scale factor to that. So high school 3 is intended to absorb population growth, and would not, and not having a high school, and the Future Ready complex would allow us to expand the programs to multiple comprehensive high schools and allow us to grow those programs. It would be very difficult to offer aeronautical engineering in the current facility we have, because we're basically out of space, but we could offer aeronautical engineering at a CTE facility like the Future Ready complex, where we could build more than one airplane in that space. As we grow in students, more students will want to build airplanes, or more students will be in mechanics and auto body shop programs, and we can just create an efficiency of scale, if you will, by having the higher level classes in one location, and we don't have multiple campuses with program redundancy.
Awesome, thank you. The second question that we have in tonight is geared more towards elementary schools. You talked a little bit about the 2 new elementary schools that are planned through the 2021 bond, and how they would be designed like some of our newer schools like Pearl, Williams, and Wolf Ranch Elementary. So the question is geared towards, what are we thinking about related to our older elementary schools like Village and Cooper? Are they being considered for renovation or replacement like Frost? And on this schedule, it seems that Frost replacement would likely be around 2026. Does that sound accurate on the timeline?
So let's try to address that in each one. So one of the things we look at is attendance zones, and location of school sites, and where we can acquire school sites, and where there's current growth, but also yet growth internally, not just new growth. And so Village Elementary is a critical location. We have no intentions to ever moving out of Village Elementary. We would be exploring if it can be added on to, possibly. We will be looking at the long-term needs for that site. With the Frost renovation, turning Benold into a new Frost, we believe that capacity can absorb some of the growth closer to Frost, and to allow for growth at the Village and the Cooper elementary schools. So we could see renovations for those footprints. Those footprints are larger than Frost, and so they do have more capacity, and would be projects that would be easier to renovate, more efficient to renovate, to expand capacity of those elementaries. So one of the things that we do not anticipate abandoning the Village or the Cooper sites, but we definitely know that there will be some needs for renovations and possible additions to those sites as growth continues. One thing with that, we're constantly looking at land acquisition, and as we see the Cooper zone continue to grow, while Frost, an expanded Frost may be able to absorb some of that growth, eventually we may need an elementary school out in that direction. We have a 35-year long-range build-out forecast, where we try to make sure we track growth and predict what areas of the community we're going to need school sites in. And so we're constantly watching that. Trying to think what I missed on that one. So the projection of whether or not it's by 2026. So this bond is giving voters an opportunity to decide on whether or not to fund designing the Benold space. So should this bond pass, construction on Benold would start next year. We would open Benold in either the fall or middle of the year of 2024. and it would take another bond to fund the renovations of the current Benold into a new Frost. This only funds the design, but that also falls in line with our timeline of the possibility of a 2024 or 25 bond. And that's going to be driven by capacity and program needs as well.
Great, thank you. The next question is related to the swim center and the location for it. Question is, I see two new facilities, the swim center and the CTE center are on the west side of 35, and at this point, closer to GHS. When the third high school is open, the zones will obviously be different. The swim center is especially to the west, and I know the district is limited in location sites, but has there been a population or geographic study of the low income free reduced lunch population to ensure that they don't have a bigger burden in accessing those facilities?
Yes, as far as the district goes, we will always provide transportation if it's a district funded program. For example, we will always work with students on transportation needs if they're going to participate in the program. And the covered water space that is being proposed for elementary swim program access and other special education needs that can be met through that indoor water instruction facility, we would also provide transportation for those. And so I know that when working with the YMCA and the location of Shell Road and being part of the future of the Southwest Bypass, that the expansion of that road and that being a major thoroughfare in the future, we feel like will open up more accessibility there as well. Some people have asked about the Southeast Quadrant, and for availability to community members that are not enrolled in Georgetown ISD, it looked like there was accessibility in neighboring communities in the southeast portion of the district. So on this one, we felt like we had the property. It was going to be on a major thoroughfare that we could provide access to multiple comprehensive high schools. And so it was the best location we felt like that we have access to that we can still accommodate the needs there. I don't know if that answered your question, but if not, if I need to get more information, you can follow up. And guys, we can put these out on frequently asked questions to make sure you can see any other follow-up questions we have.
Awesome, thank you. I think seeing that map of Georgetown sometimes and seeing where the growth is coming is really impactful to realize how much of our community is growing what is perceived as West, but really is kind of central and becoming more central every day. So thank you for that question. It looks like we just had another one pop in. This one is about Benold. It says, I like the Benold replacement plan and how it expands the footprint for attendance zones and the feeder pattern. I appreciate y'all creating multiple opportunities in different formats. So more of a comment than a question. So thank you to our viewer for that. We had a couple other great comments in here. Keep in mind that there is going to be more development along Shell Road in the coming years with both new homes and single family. Got a lot of thank you shout outs on here for sharing information. I did just share the GeorgetownISDbond.org website. If anybody is on here still and is looking for some more information, please visit that. You'll find a lot of things, including FAQs, voting information. And up on your screen is a QR code that's going to direct you to our Let's Talk platform. If you think of questions later that you didn't get to ask tonight, please check it out. Send them to us on Let's Talk and we'll get them to the appropriate staff member for response. We just had one more question come in. Will you be sharing this video to the masses? I think it's great information. Absolutely. We plan to post the recording of this presentation to the website so that it can be accessible. We're also pushing things out on social media all this week, breaking it down into smaller chunks of information with short videos about each of the propositions. So definitely follow along on social media. Our handle on social media is @GeorgetownISD. You can send us questions anytime via Let's Talk using the QR code on the screen. And you can visit our bond website at www.georgetownISDbond.org. We'll give you guys a couple more minutes if anyone has anything else that they want to ask Dr. Brent.
Are the Astros playing yet? That's what I want to know. Nope. Ah,
Sounds like that answer is no. Sounds like we had good timing then. We can get off of the virtual presentation and everybody can go watch baseball.
ladies and
With
gentlemen,
that,
I
I
just
see
want to,
somebody hopping
yeah,
off the screen.
thank you guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good one.